Hello, and welcome to this conversation with Pål Jonson, the Minister of Defense of the Kingdom of Sweden. This event is hosted by the Transatlantic Security Initiative at the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. My name is Tressa Genov, and I'm Director for Programs and Operations and a Senior Fellow here at the Scowcroft Center. We're speaking at a time when the Transatlantic Alliance is being tested by immense security challenges. Russia's war in Ukraine and increased hybrid attacks across the continent have produced the most consequential shift in Europe's security landscape since the end of the Cold War, driving transatlantic allies to rethink long-standing assumptions about their security. For Sweden, this transformation has been especially significant. For over 200 years, Sweden's foreign policy and security were rooted in a policy of neutrality and non-alignment. But less than 3 months after Russia's full-scale invasion, Sweden, along with its neighbor Finland, made the historic decision to apply for NATO membership. Since then, Sweden has wasted no time in becoming a net provider of security in Northern Europe. Swedish warships are bolstering Allied naval forces in the Baltic Sea, while Sweden's top-of-the-class combat aircraft patrol the skies in support of NATO's air policing missions. Sweden is also providing ground units to the multinational battle group in Latvia and has agreed to serve as a framework nation for NATO's forward land defense forces in Finland. Since assuming office in 2022, Minister Jonson has overseen Stockholm's accession to NATO and has guided significant expansion of Sweden's defense investments and capabilities. We're honored to have you at such an important time and to share Stockholm's perspective on NATO, Ukraine, Swedish defense investments, and the relationship with the United States. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk to us. It's exactly 2 years to the day that you were here last, December 5th, 2023, here at the Council. So we're really excited to get your perspective today on NATO, Ukraine, Swedish defense and investments, and everything in between. So thank you very much. So let's dive in. I wanted to start first. Yesterday you were at the Pentagon, you met with Secretary Hegseth. I know you covered everything from the New York National Guard state partnership to the heavy issues, the NATO issues, and the role that Sweden is having in the leadership related to the 5% in particular. So can you tell us a little bit about how that meeting went and how you see the snapshot of the US Swedish defense relationship right now?
Very good, and thank you for having me on. It's a great honor, and when I was here 2 years ago, we were not allies, we were partners, of course, but back then on this very day I signed the Defense Cooperation Agreement with the then Secretary Austin, and then we've been implementing the DCA, and then we have the SSP, and then we're incrementally becoming into NATO's planning process as well. So it's been a very intensive time, but also very interesting time. Now, a few words then in regards to yesterday's meeting was very good. We appreciate that the US administration takes note of our quite ambitious defense investments. So Sweden has tripled this defense budget in 7 years. We doubled it in 4 years. And we aim to reach the 3.5% and the 5%, not by 2035, but 2030, because we think it's necessary in order for us to deliver on these capability targets. So a rather aggressive approach to defense investment, which is really important to strengthen the ability to deter and defend. The other aspect of it as well is, as you alluded to, that's our DDA activities. It's important for us to make sure that we contribute. We didn't join NATO just to get security guarantees, but also to project stability. We joined at a difficult time for our security. I just want to go back to the 17th of December 2021 when Foreign Minister Lavrov sent out his letter stating, no further NATO enlargements and that NATO should withdraw all its assets and capabilities to 1997 borders. And that affected us as well, but we greatly appreciated NATO's open door policy and that we were welcome to come into the alliance. And I think this would not have happened without the horrible war that Russia started against Ukraine. And I always say this is the mother of all unintended consequences for Russia. Russia had one objective with Sweden and Finland. It was to keep us outside the alliance. And now, of course, we joined the alliance because of the Russian war against Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about, of course, Russia has been pretty clear about its conventional buildup, but recently it's been all over the news, of course, the troubling increase in drone activity, with several incursions by Russian aircraft into Allied space. Sweden, too, has reported drone sightings near its second biggest airport and your main naval base. And then, of course, there have been several cases of Swedish fighter jets intercepting Russian military planes over the Baltic Sea. So take us through how you see how NATO is responding to this threat and how you see NATO's Russia strategy in general. And then what additional steps you think the alliance needs to take to address the full range of threats, conventional and unconventional.
Yeah. So NATO's response, that's a symptom, and it's a symptom of the fact that Russia has shown a willingness to take greater political and military risks, of course, with a full-scale invasion into Ukraine, but also in the way that it's operating when it comes to hybrid operations. Where we can see that Russia, unfortunately, has been escalating its hybrid activities. Before it used to be about disinformation, misinformation, and cyber espionage and cyber attacks, but now we also see acts of sabotage. I'm referring to the events in Poland, and we see incursions into Allied airspace. On balance, I think that the alliance has acted wisely. We express political solidarity. That's of course what happened when 19 Russian drones came into the airspace of Poland, and we acted the same, I think, both in regards to Estonia and Romania. But we also taken the necessary measures in order to strengthen our ability to deter and defend. So political cohesion, solidarity has been strong, but also the Eastern Center mission, of course, that the Secretary General of NATO together with Sakar launched in September as well to strengthen our ability to uphold the territorial integrity of Allied airspace as well. So I think it acted wisely. Sweden has also a policy to contain and constrain Russia, which means that we're very active in best way, of course, continuing supporting Ukraine, but we're also very active on pinpointing more Russian shadow fleet ships, and we want to step up also sanctions on Russia as well in order to assure that Ukrainians can negotiate from a position of strength and force the Russians to engage into these serious negotiations, which we haven't really seen the commitment for Russia for doing so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with Stockholm and Helsinki in NATO now, let's talk about the Arctic a little bit, because of course that is related to Russia and China and other players. But I wanted to talk about your views on Sweden's specific role related to the High North, NATO's view of the Arctic right now, and just what else you think needs to be done to address Russian and Chinese aspirations in the region?
Absolutely. If I start on the demand signal, so to speak, so what we're seeing right now is that Russia is picking up some of the military facilities and infrastructure that they actually had during the Cold War, and that they're resettling up in the High North as well, and expanding and prioritizing those kind of military capabilities to have up in the north. We also see a more active Chinese presence, predominantly with resource vessels in the Arctic as well, and they call themselves a near Arctic state and so forth, and we're cognizant and we follow that very closely. So what we've been doing, of course, is we've been strengthening our subarctic capabilities. So 2 of our brigades in our land forces are tailored to be operating in the Arctic environment. I say that's one thing to be able to survive up there, and I think to also be able to fight, and I do claim that we know both. We've been re-establishing military garrisons up in the north for, actually on balance, it's 3 new regiments that we reopened there as well. Another thing I want to point out is, of course, that we're the 9th framework nation inside the alliance, so we have the responsibility for FLF Finland, and the battle group for FLF Finland is going to be based in Sweden, but it's is shaped in order to operate up in the northern part of Finland. So we're beefing up capabilities in combination, of course, with heavy investment on the sensor side. We have something, our early airborne sensors called Global Eye. We're investing into that to get better situation awareness. We're investing into deep strike capabilities, but also into space capabilities. What you also find with Sweden and Finland in the alliance is that the whole northern flank of the alliance is being revamped, because in terms of military planning, this was a region that was surrounded by unpredictability when it comes to military planning, but now it's predictability, and I do claim now that Sweden is a cornerstone for the defense of Northern Europe, because now we can all integrate and cooperate because we're all in the same defense, we all operate the same defense plans.
And I know yesterday you had an event at the embassy related to Sweden's role in space and your expanding role there. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. We're investing quite heavily into space as well, and we're helped by having a rather vibrant space sector. We've been cooperating with the Ukrainian side on space as well to provide them better resilience on communications and surveillance. So we are definitely stepping up, and we launched a civil military program as well, meaning that we're going to be sending up more civil and military satellites and being the eyes and ears up in the north of the alliance as well. So. And we are, of course, grateful for doing it in close cooperations with the United States. So we have what's called a TSA that we signed between Sweden and the US to deepen our space cooperation and have better situational awareness, especially working on things as connectivity up also in the high north.
Right. So let's turn to Ukraine. We discussed it a little bit already, but the EU defense ministers met this week in Brussels. This was to discuss new funding options for military and economic support to Ukraine, including support for a reparations loan, the cash value, I think about $140 billion, or billion euros, I should say, in frozen Russian state assets to finance Ukraine's war. Can you share where these negotiations stand, your view on it, and Sweden's particular stance?
Absolutely. I want to underline, we also invited the Ukrainian Defense Minister, Denis Shmyhal, as well, and I had a bilateral with him. We're in very close contact. So what we realize is, okay, Russia so far has not been successful in this war. They took less than 1% of Ukrainian territory during the last 12 months at a huge casualty rate. But the Ukrainians need financial means to invest into their defense industrial base. The Ukrainians have been doing a great job in really expanding their defense industrial production, breaking the cost curve and the delivery curve, but they need money in order to sustain the fight against Russia, and therefore we think it's reasonable that the immobilized Russian funds, right now it's only the windfall profit of that has been invested into Ukraine, but that we could use those immobilized Russian funds as a reparation loans. That would be a healthy vitamin dose into the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian defense industrial base. Because what we're seeing right now, and Sweden will say we want to have a burden shifting within the alliance also when it comes to Ukraine support, because we provide quite a lot. We provided the Ukrainians with $9 billion in military support, and we have $4 billion for next year, another $4 billion for that. But across the alliance right now, we've been seeing the wrong trajectory on bilateral support as well, because I see a lot of European economies being stuck between low growth, high debt after the pandemic, and also delivering on the 3.5% as well. But I think that bilateral support in combination with the reparation loans would be very, very significant for the Ukrainians, because they scaled up the production themselves, and they do it quicker and cheaper than our defense industry to provide heavy metal to their armed forces.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could dive a little bit more into the defense industrial base cooperation you have with Ukraine, the nature of it, what Sweden's bringing to the table, and then how you're learning from Ukraine, as you mentioned, their alacrity really and their speed and in the response necessitated by the war. So I'd like to hear more about the nature of the cooperation, how it's being implemented, and then nested that within your broader defense relationship. Of course, there's the grip and sail and other things. So.
Sure. So what we can bring to the table in the interaction with the Ukrainian side is there's no other country of 10 million who has the ability to design fighter aircraft, surface vessels, submarines, IFVs, and artillery systems. And we donated a lot of platforms to the Ukrainian, and we got them combat tested, and we're constantly improving and learning from the war. So in that regard, it's also rewarding to us. We revamped our support for Ukraine like 12 months ago because we didn't have the magazine depth to continue sending the shells. So then we saw what can we do commercial off the shelf from our defense to send to the Ukrainians. In parallel, of course, a lot of Swedish teams are teaming up with Ukrainian teams, and the Ukrainian teams, they are better than us. I mean, they're the world's best when it comes to US systems, you know, they were able to do this during a war. So we have a lot of things to learn from them, breaking the cost curve and the time curve. We have the advanced research and development and design capabilities, which is a really good match. And we also opened up for having production of Ukrainian companies inside Sweden. Then we learn from them and we can finance their production, and they also need the protection because the Russians with their long-range strike capabilities are continuously attacking the Ukrainian production sites. Last point I just want to bring out on that as well, when my Ukrainian counterpart was in Stockholm, we also signed a letter of intent on a defense innovation unit, which we are right now building the Swedish Armed Forces, and they have a defense innovation unit in the armed forces, and then we can work also on the innovation things, which I think is really inspiring how the Ukrainians have, you know, they have innovation cycles in Ukraine that's would take 5-6 years, that happens in 5-6 months inside Ukraine. Last point I would just highlight as well, so Sweden and Germany are leading the electronic warfare coalition inside the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. That's extremely rewarding because, of course, electronic warfare is the life and blood of this war because it's connected to the unmanned systems and to the precision of the long-range strike capabilities as well, and we're cooperating very closely with the Ukrainian side there as well.
Yeah. Well, let's also talk about the 5% a little bit more. So, of course, with the Hague Summit commitment, it's 3.5% spending benchmark on core defense, but there's the 1.5% on resilience, critical infrastructure, other pieces. Can you talk a little bit about how Sweden's approaching the 1.5%? Particularly on the resilience side.
Yeah, that's something we've been working on quite a lot because during the Cold War we had something we called total defense concept. We had a strong military defense but also a strong civil defense as well. Before joining NATO we actually had a national defense plan ourselves, so we've been in our DNA to think about military defense and civil defense as two different sides on the same coin. You have to do both as well. And we welcome, of course, now that's being highlighted in the alliance as a security means as well, on the 1.5%. So we are already doing and investing very heavily into that. So the 1.5% I don't think will be so difficult for us to attain. The other one, of course, is going to be infrastructure. And then, you know, Sweden is an important staging and basing area of the alliance in Northern Europe, you know, assuring a better defendability of both the Baltic states and Finland, but that means that we have to invest a lot into host nation support, so that's something that we're working on. And to my mind also the 1.5% should actually catch the Ukraine support, and I know someone want to put it in the 3.5%. I'm hesitant with that because we need the 3.5% to deliver on the capability targets.
So for 2026, what is your top priority as Defense Minister as you head into this new year?
Well, we're heading for elections, so that's always sharpens the mind of a politician as well. But so what we are doing right now, we asked a report from the Swedish Armed Forces actually on on doing the capability targets. That's where laser focused to make sure that new defense plans are executable. And I'm glad and I'm honored that all 8 parties in the Swedish Parliament stands behind us going up to 5% of GDP, and that they also stand behind the capability targets. And I want to continue having that kind of consensus in Swedish politics. So all 8 parties also stand behind the fact that supporting the $9 billion US that we sent to Ukraine. And the more united you are internally a country, the stronger you are abroad as well. So doing this across the aisle on a bipartisan matter now for this spring, and to make sure that the defense bill we took a year ago being also shaped even further by the new capability targets, and that we can deliver combat power to and put things in the hands of the warfighter quickly to make sure that we can deter and defend and keep the peace within the Euro-Atlantic area. That's my main goal.
So a big goal, but an achievable one for sure. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much, Minister, for taking the time to speak with us here at the Atlantic Council. We're proud to have a long-standing relationship and partnership with Sweden, and we look forward to continuing this relationship in the future. To our audience, please check out our website, atlanticcouncil.org, for more research, analysis, and events from the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.